All right, friends, good morning. Are we ready to debunk some myths? Good morning, friends. How are you? Welcome to Flight Sim Expo 2025. I am honored to be among the first to be able to say that to you this weekend. Hope that you'll have a safe trip here and have safe travels home later on this weekend whenever you get to go. My name is Rob. As the screen tells you, I'm the host of Slant Alpha Adventures on Twitch TV, and today we're going to be debunking some VATSIM myths. I'm going to take you on a journey that will explore some of the myths that people hold about the VATSIM network, and in that journey we will also be exploring the boundaries, the absolute margins of trademark infringement. Anyway, a little bit about me before we get started. I've been a flight sim enthusiast for over 40 years. I hope that you guys don't mind if I don't move around on the stage too much. I'm a 40-year flight sim enthusiast, and I have the body of a 40-year flight sim enthusiast. I am 100% sim pilot. I have not ever done this in a real-world cockpit, so take most of what I say with at least a little bit of a grain of salt. I've been a member of VATSIM for the last 15 of those 40 years, since 2010 when I joined the VATSIM network. Not long after I joined VATSIM and became acclimated, I started becoming involved in advancing pilot knowledge, advancing pilot training on the network. For those of you familiar with the VATSIM network, you may remember a pilot training organization called VATSTAR that was around until just about a year and a half ago. They were founded in 2015. I helped put it together, and I wrote basically all of the training and testing material that they started with. So I've been advancing pilot education on the network for quite some time. I am an active controller with the Washington ARTCC within VAT USA. And I've been doing that actively since 2018, so the last 7 of those years, right around the time that I handed off the torch at VATSTAR. And just this past November, I was appointed as the VATSIM Vice President of Pilot Training for the entire network. So not bad for a guy with 0.0 hours in the real-world logbook, I would say, right? And then also, just on this coming Tuesday, we'll be celebrating the 7th anniversary of that aforementioned Twitch live stream. So I hope that you all will join us on Twitch on Tuesday evening, 7 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, 2300 Zulu Time. As we celebrate our 7th anniversary, we'll be doing some giveaways. Commercial over. All right, I did this slide in Houston was it Las Vegas last year, when I put together a list of pros and cons of joining the VATSIM network. And I liked the slide so much that I'm going to do it again for you. Really, I am not trying to sell you on joining VATSIM, okay? Well, even as a member of the Board of Governors, I don't see any kickback for however many people join. So I'm really trying to give you an honest look at whether or not it's right for you. If you've been thinking about getting on the network, this list may maybe help you decide whether to take the leap and give it a try. All right? Just trying to be an honest pro and con look for whether or not the network's right for you. One of the pros, one of the biggest things that VATSIM has, as opposed to your in-sim computer-generated air traffic control, whether that's built into the sim or whether you have a third-party product that provides computer-generated air traffic control. I think one thing that you find on the VATSIM network as opposed to that is a more realistic variety of instructions. And I like to say that it has a lot less main character energy with VATSIM, because the computer-generated ATC, it has one thing in mind, one purpose, is to get you from your origin to your destination with a semi-realistic set of air traffic control instructions. But the traffic that is around you is really generated more as the illusion of traffic, the illusion of immersion. There's air traffic control chatter. It's not really providing air traffic control services to all of those pilots. Those pilots are generated around you. You are the main character. So a lot of times you don't get things like deviated off of your route for traffic, deviated into a hold because of heavy traffic at your destination, deviated off of your route for weather. You know, on VATSIM, you will often get a vector for sequencing, and then you'll have to rejoin your route later. Your built-in computer ATC is not often going to do that because you're the most important pilot in the sky, or you might be the only pilot in the sky. So on VATSIM, you got a lot more realistic mix of instructions, and And I think that makes it a lot more fun and a lot more challenging. The flip side of that is you don't always get the route, procedure, or runway that you expect. You can't just fly what you filed. And I think that's one of the big misconceptions that longtime sim pilots coming into VATSIM have. They feel like, oh, I know how to do this. I can program this FMC, and it takes me on a magenta line path that starts literally on the pavement where I lift off and ends literally on the pavement where I touch down. And my job as an airline pilot is to make the plane take off and follow that path exactly. And that works fine if you're the only person in the sky. On VATSIM, you've got a little more that you have to do, and you have to be ready for that. And if you're not ready for that, you don't know how to be vectored off of and rejoin a route, or you don't know how to shortcut a route, a direct to a point further up the line, you might not be ready for VATSIM. Another great thing about VATSIM is the realistic variety of people and styles and personalities that you encounter on the network. There's no substitute for talking to a global network full of real, actual human beings. The AI, especially the generative AI systems that are now out there, are getting more and more robust in the simulation of this, and it's close, it's getting there. But it's still not quite a substitute for actual real people. The flip side of that is on VATSIM, you do occasionally have trouble understanding those people. They might talk too quickly, or they might talk with a thick accent, especially if their native language is not the same as your native language. They might not enunciate well. They might be talking on a really terrible microphone. So it happens, and it's one of the things you have to be prepared for when you get into VATSIM. On top of that, occasionally you encounter a controller who's not having his best day. That does happen, and it is something that you need to be prepared for. Now, one of the myths that we're going to talk about later in this presentation, we're going to kind of dive into that one a little bit further. It doesn't happen as often as I think the network has the reputation for. It tends to be what people remember. It tends to be what people post about. It tends to be what people post clips of. But I think when we get into it later in this presentation, I can help you avoid the situations that cause that kind of thing. So we'll get there. It does happen. It's not as frequent as sometimes I think the reputation makes it seem as it is. But we'll talk about it in a little bit more detail later on. Great thing about VATSIM is that I think you get fewer situations where the controller gives you what I call a glitched instruction. The computer-generated ATC tools are okay. They're coming along. They're getting better and better. But still, the VATSIM air traffic controllers tend to be better. And I'd said fewer. I didn't say none. Because VATSIM controllers are humans. They do make mistakes, and they've received a fraction of the training that real-world controllers do, but they do pretty well at the most basic scenarios. They do better, I think, than the computer-generated ATC in terms especially of very unique airspace, less common destinations and less common situations, VFR traffic. Some of the products that you can get for computer-generated ATC don't even handle VFR traffic. And I think that VATSIM controllers do a better job, not a perfect job, but a better job than those products, especially when you're mixing VFR and IFR traffic together. The one thing that we can't really understate is the benefit of joining a community like VATSIM for the community, because we are so much more than just a collection of pilots and controllers on a server network. We are a community of people. We converse on message forums, we converse on Discord, we share ideas, we share experiences, we share laughs, we share our passions. We are really just a huge community of people. And in fact, this very event that we're at today, this weekend, grew out of an annual meetup of a pilot and controller online community. That meetup annually got bigger and bigger over the years, more and more attendance. At one point they said, hey, we got contacted by a vendor who wants to show off some of their products. Well, we're at our annual meetup this year. Is that okay with you guys? Yeah, sure, bring them on in. And it just grew and grew from there until now it's this massive conference with 3,000 attendees and 10 million vendors all showing off their products and services. So the social aspect of a network like VATSIM really just, its importance can't be underemphasized. The flip side of the social aspect, though, is what? social anxiety, right? Very, very real. There are, for some, people are petrified of the concept of putting on a microphone and a headset and pushing that push-to-talk button and talking to someone who is, you know, a real person somewhere around the globe that they've never met, and that's terrifying, and that's a real thing. And I'm not trying to belittle that. I'm just saying that if you're considering getting on VATSIM or not getting on VATSIM, this is one of the things that you think about, right? So again, I'm not trying to sell you on it. It may or may not be for you, and I'm just trying to give you an honest review, honest feedback. The other three things that we hear people say, the top three things that we hear people say about why they won't get on VATSIM. Number one, it's difficult to set up and get running right. I kind of call, well, I'll say it politely. I don't think that's true. Maybe it used to be. It's less true than it used to be. But we still do hear people say it, and so it's a consideration. It does take a little bit of technical know-how and some basic instruction following, and yeah, you hit snags every now and then, like anything else. But this is one of the reasons that we hear people say they don't want to get on VATSIM. There's not 100% global coverage, 24/7, 365. That is true. VATSIM controllers are volunteers. They come and go. There's a whole group of them right behind you, by the way. Go check it out after we close up here. You want to see what VATSIM looks like from the controller's side. Go check those guys out, and they'll be happy to tell you. But it is true that they're not on all the time. You know, air traffic control services in the real world are staffed by people who are paid to do so. And these guys are not. So sometimes if you're flying into Los Angeles, there's a Los Angeles Center, there's SoCal Approach, there's LAX Tower, LAX Ground, and other times you fly in and it's nobody, and you're self-reporting your position over a common traffic advisory frequency. Well, that's a little immersion breaking if you're flying into one of the busiest Class Bravo airports in the country. So that's one of the reasons people say, well, come on now, it's not really for me. Okay, that's fine. The third thing is, you know, if you're on short final and suddenly you get a work phone call, you can't pause. You kind of can't just like stop everything you're doing and take that phone call. And so that's what people say is, well, like I can't get on VATSIM because, you know, I have these situations where I have to, you know, I might get interrupted and then I've got to disconnect and ruin my entire flight or what have you. You can, on VATSIM, for those of you who don't know, you can request permission to step out of the cockpit for a few minutes in the middle of your flight, typically at cruise when there's not a lot going on. And if the controller says, well, I don't have a control instruction that I need to give you, I don't have a sequence vector that I need to give you, I don't have a handoff to the next sector that I have to give you for the next 5 or 10 minutes, they usually say, yeah, that's fine, just report when you're back. So that is possible. You don't have to sit the entire flight at your computer. You can step up, take a stretch break, grab another beverage, liquid recycling as I like to call it. So you can do that, but if you're on short final, that is not a good time to pause and do any liquid recycling if you're on a multiplayer network with lots of pilots around you. You can't ask everybody on final approach to pause because you have to take a phone call. So there you go. That's my pros and cons list, and we're going to get a little bit deeper into some of these pros and cons in the presentation coming up. All right, are you ready? Let's debunk some myths. Are we ready? Here we go. We shall start with and I'll tell you what. I polled controllers and pilots from all across VATSIM and all across the global community, and came up with a list. And I want you guys to bear with me for a second. The list was 146 items long. Now, don't panic. We will take a break for dinner. Okay, I narrowed it down to the top 8. Okay, so we'll hit myth number 1 right now. Myth number 1: all videos where someone is performing air traffic control for flight services for flight simulation pilots is VATSIM. I'm going to give you an example of a video that you might find on YouTube of a guy performing air traffic control services for flight simulation pilots. Are you ready? Might need to boost the sound on this just a touch.
Very good. Speedbird runway 9 left. You are clear for takeoff. Winds indicating 050 at 03. Fly runway heading.
Good takeoff. Runway 9 left. Fly runway heading. Speedbird.
How many souls on board today?
1.
Can confirm aircraft type.
737.
Are you saying you're solo? You're flying a 737 solo right now?
Affirm.
Speedbird, abort your takeoff. Slam on the brakes, slam on the brakes. Other aircraft on frequency, we're gonna just make this seem like it's an air show. Just that we're gonna say this is planned, so don't worry about any of this. We have everything under control. If anyone else needs any clearances or whatnot, please contact us. We are resuming realistic operations.
All right, continue holding short. We have a hot air balloon on short final for runway 9. Continue holding short. Hot air balloon about to land.
Hot air balloon.
What in God's name is happening? Hot air balloon to a vertical. And we have a hot air balloon flying sideways. I'm going to ask all F-18s to intercept that hot air balloon that just did 300 knots past the airport.
Okay, so what did we just see? There is a series of videos that are on YouTube, and they were created by a gentleman who goes by the handle of Air Force Proud 95. Anybody familiar with him? Could give a little round of applause for Air Force Proud 95. I contacted him. He said I was allowed to use that clip in this presentation. By the way, he doesn't mind when anyone promotes his channel, so it's fine. I think what has happened, and this is going back 5 years, 10 years maybe, what has happened was these videos became very, very popular on YouTube. At the same time, people heard that there was a network where people provide air traffic control services for flight simulator pilots. People then saw these videos and were like, oh, there you go, that's what I'm talking about, that's VATSIM. So I think there's a little bit of a myth that persists out there that's what VATSIM is all about. So, by the way, two fun facts about Air Force Proud 95. Well, number one, like I did say, he did give me permission to use that clip. Fun fact number two is he's here. He's here this weekend. I don't know if he's in the audience. I can't see anything with these lights in my face. I don't know if he's here in the audience like right now, but he is here this weekend. And like I said, I did contact him, and he said it was fine for me to use that clip. So you might see him around. But anyway, my point is that what he did with those videos is it was a general multiplayer server and some sort of a TeamSpeak or other published place where you could come in and he would provide ATC services, but it was really just a free-for-all, really just goofing off. And I think people erroneously who didn't know the full picture of what they were seeing on these videos kind of assumed that, hey, that's what VATSIM is, people doing ATC for flight sim enthusiasts. The other fun fact, by the way, about Air Force Proud 95 is that he is a VATSIM member, and he does flights on VATSIM. Most of his recent videos are of him on VATSIM taking his flying a lot more seriously than what we just saw. So anyway, if we do happen to see him around, like I said, he's probably lurking around here at some point, but he is here. Guy's name is David. Very nice guy. He was very gracious when I contacted him. So thank you. If you're out there, Mr. Air Force Proud 95, thank you for letting me use that. All right. Do we have enough there to consider this one debunked? Okay, we're going to call this debunked. Actually, let's do this. When I point to you guys, 1, 2, 3, I want you all to yell out debunked. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Debunked. There we go. All right, very good. Discovery Channel, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Let's go on to myth number 2. VATSIM is for Microsoft Flight Simulator. We hear a variation of this. It goes like this. Hey, which sim is VATSIM busiest on? Flight Sim 2020 or Flight Sim 2024? And the reality is that VATSIM is available for all these flight sims. Flight Sim 9, Flight Sim X, Flight Sim 2020, Flight Sim 2024, Prepared P3D as we call it, version 4+, X-Plane version 11+. Flight Gear, has anyone even heard of Flight Gear? You can get on VATSIM with it. It's amazing. The kicker is all of those users see and hear each other regardless of what platform they're on. And when you think about it, it has to be that way, right? It has to be that way. Because when you get onto a website like VATSIM Radar to see what air traffic control services are up and what pilots are flying, there's not a drop-down that says, oh, which sim do you want to check VATSIM for? We're all there together. We're all in one global network. We're all in the same server group. We're all seeing and hearing all of each other. When I sign on to do air traffic control, I'm not signing on to do just Flight Sim 2020 air traffic control, or just Flight Sim 2024 air traffic control, or I'm not building separate sequences for pilots of one sim versus pilots of another sim. We're all in there together. I mean, those poor Flight Gear guys, they would never have any air traffic control. But anyway, we are all on there together. It is all one group. You can use any of the sims that are listed on that screen, and you will see and hear everybody. In fact, when you're in a taxi out line and you're behind somebody in line for departure, you may not know, you probably won't know, which sim the guy in front of you is using. It may or may not be the same sim that you're using. You'll see him anyway. The magic of VATSIM. All right, are we ready to call this one debunked? 1, 2, 3? All right, very good. Moving on, myth number 3. Fun so far? Okay. If you guys awake, maybe I did this too early. Myth number 3, SimBrief knows all. This is kind of like my now SimBrief, by the way, I don't want to castigate them. It is a marvelous flight planning tool. It is so good that I think people get on it and it spits out perfect flight plans that and it's so perfect that people don't really understand everything that SimBrief is doing for you. So they don't really understand what all goes into it. The reality is, okay, one thing that's in your SimBrief plan is an active runway for arrival and departure. Well, the reality is that the active runways are decided by the controllers at the origin airport and the controllers at the destination airport. The runways that SimBrief spits out are good recommendations usually, based on the wind, but they may not be correct based on the actual operational flow at that airport. I'll give you one example using an airport that I do a lot of air traffic control at is Baltimore Washington International, BWI. If the wind is coming out of the northwest, it will often say you're departing on runway 33 left. And that's perfectly reasonable based on the wind. However, when Baltimore is in its westbound flow, they depart off of runway 28 and they arrive on, they depart on 28, they arrive on 33 left because those runways cross in such a fashion that the planes don't have to taxi across an active runway ever at Baltimore in its normal configuration. So departing from 33 left actually causes this huge disruption at the airport because you have to taxi them across the departure runway and put them in line where people are landing rather than departing, whereas when everyone's departing on the same runway, it's so much easier to line up and wait and then just fire them off in these tiny gaps in the arrival stream. So trying to depart from 33 left, if Baltimore's the least bit busy, which it never is on VATSIM, it's a disruption. So yes, that might be the most sensible runway for the wind, but it might not be the most sensible runway for the operations at the airport. So please understand that the runways that are on there are recommendations. They may not be the final decision on what active runway a controller is going to prefer that you use. Now, you can always request something different from the controllers, but especially if the wind is 5 knots, I mean, come on, just get in line and do what everyone else is doing, please. SIDs and stars in your route, if you file them in your route, which in the US you do, other places you don't, but SIDs and stars in your route might be runway dependent, and sometimes they might be time dependent. The route that you got from SimBrief might work if the airport is landing in a northbound operation, but you might be on a different star into Dallas-Fort Worth, Dallas-Love, for example, if that airport is now in southbound operations. That operation can change if the wind shifts even during your flight. The SID that you filed, the star that you filed rather, might have been perfectly valid when you took off. You might have to flip it around when you land. So again, it's an instance where what SimBrief gave you is a good recommendation, but it's not the final word necessarily. Routes are sometimes adjusted to balance controller workloads. So the route that SimBrief gave you is perfectly valid. As a matter of fact, it's probably the most common route flown between your origin and your destination. But today on VATSIM, there's an event at John F. Kennedy Airport. So we're sending half of the traffic up the coast. We're sending the other half of the traffic up through central Pennsylvania. So we need 50% of the pilots flying into this event to take a different route. Okay? That's not what SimBrief told you, but we need it in order to balance our workload. So again, what SimBrief gives you is a great recommendation, but it's not the final word. There is other traffic out there besides you. Okay? So again, 1, 2, 3. Thanks. Yeah, thanks. I thought there was one more piece coming up before that, so I lost track. All right, let's move on to number 4. Myth number 4, you have to be perfect to fly on VATSIM. We hear a couple variations on this. Variation number 1, pilots get banned from VATSIM for making mistakes. Variation number 2, VATSIM controllers are really impatient towards newbies. Here's the reality, guys. The reality is almost all probably 99% or more of the horror stories that you might hear through the grapevine about, oh, the controllers were really, really rude, I'm never doing that again. 99% of the time, those stories come from London Heathrow, London Gatwick, John F. Kennedy, Los Angeles, Frankfurt, Germany. You get what I'm saying. When you make your first handful of flights on VATSIM, you really need to be careful about where you're choosing to make that flight. Again, I think there is a mentality of, oh, I've been simming for 30 years, I know what I'm doing. And you get into this situation where the controller's now trying to reroute you or shortcut you or sequence you, and you're like, well, all I do is take off and hit LNAV and VNAV. Now, what's the controller yelling at me for? You know? So you really do need to be careful, understand that it is a new environment, whether you're experienced in a single-player environment or not, you're going to have a learning curve. So choose wisely, make those first handful of flights in airports where there's air traffic control, but not a ton of traffic, because controllers who have the workload capacity to slow down, repeat things, and explain things are going to be nice as heck every single time. I almost guarantee you. Go into an airport where it's not slammed to the gills. You're going to have a good experience. Even if you hit one of these learning curves and you find there's something you don't know how to do, the controller is going to be a lot more forgiving when they have time to slow down and repeat and explain. I promise. The less traffic there is, there it is. Okay, that bullet point is what I just said. Hopefully we have enough to call this one debunked. Do you guys agree? 1, 2, 3? All right. Oh, I forgot. Man, I'm all over the place with this. I forgot one point I wanted to make, okay? At the very top, we said pilots get banned from VATSIMs for mistakes. There's a huge difference, guys, a huge difference between getting disconnected from the network and getting banned from the network, okay? If you find yourself flying into a very, very busy event and you get in over your head and the controllers are trying to work with you, but they're just like, I just don't have the time to deal with this right now, a supervisor, which is basically a network moderator, might initiate a chat with you and might say, hey, I'm removing you from the network temporarily. This might not be the best environment for you to make your first couple of flights. You're more than welcome to come back to the network another time. That is a huge difference between getting, disconnected temporarily versus getting banned. The kids, they're all like, oh, that's banned me on my first flight. No. We disconnected you because you were in over your head. Come back another time. You're not banned, okay? So that's another piece of what we set up at the top. Are we ready to call this debunked now? 1, 2, 3? All right, perfect. Thank you, guys. Myth number 5. You have to sound perfect to talk on radios on VATSIM. Here's some variations that we hear on this one. Variation, confident, the confidence is like, I'm just not confident enough to use voice, so I'm just going to use text only until I'm comfortable. Fun fact for those of you who are not familiar with VATSIM, VATSIM, well, first of all, has been around for literally 25 years. Okay, VATSIM was founded right around 2000, 2001. And when it first came out, if you think back to that time in your life, not everybody had broadband internet access. So VATSIM's architecture was built around an extremely lean network protocol of sharing aircraft positions and aircraft communications, and the communications originally was all by text. You would not talk on the radio. You would use a pilot client very similar to the one that they use now, but you would type your instruction to the aircraft into that, and the aircraft would type their read back or their request back to you. Then voice architecture was added onto that later. That voice architecture was vastly improved in about 2019, so about 6 years ago from now. We've had some pretty good sounding, pretty realistic sounding radios on the VATSIM network. But that text architecture remains, and it remains for several reasons. Number one, it remains so that pilots who have disabilities can still get onto VATSIM. If they're not able to speak or if they're not able to hear, you can still fly on VATSIM because you can use that text function as a fallback. The text function is great as a temporary situation. If you are in the middle of that work phone call, but you get a control instruction at cruise, and you're like, oh, okay, vector 320 for, boss, I'm sorry, hold on 1 second. Vector 320, United 125. Okay, good. You turn the plane and then you go back to your phone call. It's great for that. It's great for folks who are For whatever reason, they're noise constrained in their house. They can't talk because their partner's asleep in the bed, right in the same room. Well, I still want to get on to do a flight, but I'll be quiet. So they can hear, but when they respond back to ATC, they have to type. So that architecture is still there, and it still works, and it's still great. What I really discourage, though, is for you to use it as a crutch because, well, I'll just use text until I get comfortable talking. Because the reality is, listening to air traffic control and typing to air traffic control does not make you better at speaking to air traffic control. What makes you better at speaking to air traffic control is speaking to air traffic control. This requires, unfortunately, that you have to be bad at it first before you can get good at it. It's okay. This is what I always like to say. The best way to get over the fear that you're going to sound like a complete fool the first few times you key up is to accept that you will sound like a complete fool the first few times that you key up and do it anyway. It's fine. I think another thing that has happened recently is that, there are all these live streamers out there that get on VATSIM and they sound very cool and very professional and you look at that and go like, well, I'm not ever going to sound that confident and cool on the radio. And you kind of hold yourself to that bar. Well, that's fine, but like if you're watching my streams, I've been a flight simmer for 40 years, I've been on VATSIM for 15 years. No, of course you're not going to sound like that on your first flight. So just keep yourself reasonable expectations. What I like to say is, I bumped it that time. That's okay, we can go back. What I like to say is, your goal should be to get a little bit better at it every time you go. So that first time, what you want to do is set a nice low bar so that it's easy to attain that goal, okay? So go out there, sound like a fool, it's fine. Your second flight, you'll sound a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better every time you go up. All right, can we call this one debunked? 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Sorry, one of these days I'll figure out this presentation that I wrote and be able to perform it perfectly for you. Well, I guess I'm a good example. You don't have to be perfect. Myth number 6. People only ever fly airliners on VATSIM. The reality is, okay, this one's mostly true. However, there are some notable exceptions, okay? We do have a dedicated group of folks who enjoy bush-style flying, places like Idaho, Alaska, New Zealand, etc. In the U.S., U.S. and North America, we have a group that meets on the first Monday of every month called the, it's called the, what do we call it? The Bush League Backcountry Fly-In Series. Downwindsim.com is where you want to go for those. But yeah, so that's one exception. We've also got a number of general aviation themed events that are put on VATSIM. This is just one example, but it's one of my favorite ones. This coming month, a few weeks from now actually, is our annual replication of the EAA AirVenture fly-in to Oshkosh, Wisconsin. The VATSIM Chicago Air TCC puts on a marvelous replication of this event. They do a fantastic job of really reproducing the ambiance and the flavor and the feel of that massive Charlie Foxtrot going into Oshkosh. They do a really good job. They even have a live stream. They have live streamed a visual version of their controller where they were literally had a viewpoint parked at, what was it, Ripon, where they do the splitting off, and they had a viewpoint parked at Ripon, and they're literally looking, okay, see the red low wing, rock your wings. Okay, great rock, red low wing, and then take the street eastbound and, prepare for your left base. So they do a fantastic job. That's coming up in a couple weeks. Very general aviation oriented, obviously. VATSIM does have an optional infrastructure of pilot ratings that start with a watered down version of a private pilot license. So you can get on to my.vatsim.net and enroll in a pilot training course. And you would, as part of that, you would be on VATSIM performing your check ride. So that's another general aviation flight that occurs occasionally on the VATSIM network. And then the Boston Virtual Air TCC, many of whom are right behind you right now, performing air traffic control services on VATSIM. When their community came into and became a part of VATSIM, they imported with them a very robust pilot and controller community. So they had a lot of general aviation fan pilots who love flying general aviation in that Boston airspace, and they all became a part of VATSIM, and they have all really maintain that enthusiasm for doing GA flights in that area. So if you look on VATSIM on a weekday evening, you're very likely to see a lot of general aviation traffic up in that Boston airspace. And then finally, a big shout out to the Virtual USA Flying Club. Very good friends of mine, and they have a booth over there as well, so you can visit them. But again, this is a group of general aviation enthusiasts who enjoy putting on GA-oriented events, about 4 a month or so, 1 a week on average. And they have a Discord, and you can go visit them in their booth and get more information on how to contact them. But another shining example of general aviation bucking this trend of VATSIM being all airliners. So while this one is mostly true, I will say, I'm not going to say this one's debunked, by the way, so you don't have to shout out for this one. So just instead of stealing from Discovery Channel, you guys remember a website called Snopes, Urban Legends? I'm going to steal from them for this one. We're going to call this a mixture of true and false information. Okay. All right, moving on. Myth number 7. Flying general aviation means flying VFR. We get variations on that, like, well, when you fly GA, you have to fly a single-engine aircraft, single-engine piston. Or when you're VFR, that means you have to fly by hand without autopilot. The reality is, these things that I'm about to put up on the screen happen in almost any combination. Almost any combination. Let me ask you, is it possible for you to have a jet airliner that is general aviation? What would John Travolta say? Absolutely yes. It is possible for a jet airliner to be a GA aircraft. If you are flying a piston aircraft, is it possible for you to be operating under instrument flight rules, IFR flight in a piston aircraft? Is it possible for a piston aircraft to be performing a commercial air carrier flight? Absolutely. Is it possible for a flight that you're flying navigating by instruments to be flown without the use of autopilot? Absolutely. So a lot of times we hear this term, oh, we're flying GA. Okay, well, that's obviously a Cessna Skyhawk, and you're VFR and you're flying by hand. No, 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 no. Not necessarily. So remember, all these 4 things are completely independent variables. It is even possible, not common, but it is possible for a jet airliner to be flown as a commercial air carrier VFR. Did happen once. Now, if they're carrying passengers, I do believe they have to be filed IFR, at least in the US. But there was a recent example where a repositioning flight was going from LaGuardia to Kennedy, and they flew it VFR, and they got out to the runway, and the controller was like, wait a minute, you're VFR? Oh, okay, sure. Left crosswind departure approved. And they did, and they did. And there's a YouTube, I think it was it VAS Aviation that published that? VAS Aviation channel on YouTube, where you can see they're like, literally, you're VFR in an A320? Okay. So anyway, are we all in agreement that this is debunked? 1, 2, 3. All right. Oh, these things can occur in any combination. God, I'm terrible at this. Terrible at this. Is it obvious that I just finished this slideshow this past Tuesday? I'm sorry. Let's do it one more time. 1, 2, 3. There we go. All right, good. All right, let's hit our, we got time to finish our final myth here. Myth number 8. It is simple to learn how to perform ATC on VATSIM. Let's hear some variations of this. All I need to know is how to set up the scope program. Let's hear another variation of this. I've been a real pilot for 15 years. I can certainly hop on and do this. I know what ATC needs to do. I've been a sim pilot for 40 years. I can hop on this. I know what ATC needs to do. Here's the reality, friends. Knowing the phraseology that you say is important, and it does give you a leg up, but there's a lot more that goes into it than that. Okay, hearing and repeating those phrases in the form of a readback is a lot easier than spitting those phrases out of thin air. And pilots often know what controllers do, but they don't necessarily know why. Now, I'm not here to tell you that training to become a controller is hard, but it's not as simple as just setting up the scope. It takes some memorization, and it takes some practice. It takes some time. So you're not going to hop on. You can download the scope program this afternoon if you want, but you're not going to be controlling on VATSIM tomorrow or this week. It's worthwhile. It is so much fun. And again, if you really want to see how it's done, you go back and talk to the guys that are right behind you. It's a blast. I will be doing VATSIM air traffic control from right over there tomorrow from 11 to 2, so you're more than welcome to stop by and talk to me about it. But it's a lot of fun, but it does take a little bit of back and forth. I'm going to give you an example, and I will need you guys to boost the audio on this. This is a clip from 2 weeks ago, the Friday Night Ops event that we did in VAT USA 2 weeks ago into the Washington and Baltimore area. And I was working up the approach sector for BWI Airport. And I had 4 planes coming in from the south and 4 planes coming in from the north all at the same time. And I was giving them sequence instructions on how to line up for the ILS approach to runway 10, the eastbound runway at Baltimore. Here we go. Delta 410, descend and maintain 2,300, turn right heading 020, vector to final.
020 and down to 2,300, Delta 410.
Southwest 2798, turn left heading 190, descend and maintain 3,000, vector to final.
Left 190, down to 3,000, 2798.
Frontier Flight 1516, turn right heading 280.
280, Frontier Flight 1516.
Walker 3775, contact Baltimore Tower 119.4.
194, thanks, Walker City 725.
Delta 410, turn right heading 070, intercept runway 10 localizer.
070, intercept localizer 10, Delta 410.
Delta 410, you are 6 miles from Effie's, maintain 2,300 till established on the localizer, cleared ILS runway 10 approach.
Maintain 2,300 till established, cleared ILS 10 approach, Delta 410.
Potomac approach, Southwest 954 is descending by the Raven 8. We have information, Quebec.
Southwest 954, Potomac approach, hello. Break, Southwest 2798, turn left heading 130, intercept runway 10 localizer.
Left 130, intercept the 10 localizer, Southwest 2798.
Delta 410, contact Baltimore Tower 119.4.
Baltimore Tower 19.4, Delta 410, thanks, good night.
Sorry for the beeping. Southwest 2798, 4 miles from Column, maintain 3,000 till established on the localizer, cleared ILS runway 10 approach.
Maintain 3,000 till established on localizer, clear ILS 10 approach, Southwest 2798.
Okay, so that was a clip from my Twitch live stream from 2 weeks ago. The beeping was the Morse code was my follow alert. I got a new follower at that moment while I was in the middle of that mess. So the beeping and the graphic acknowledges that new follower to the Twitch stream while I had no capacity to say hi to them at that moment. But anyway, but anyway, now I don't purport that I am the best approach controller on VATSIM. I'm not even the top 10. I'm not even the top 100. A lot of the guys, actually most of the guys that are better than me at approach are sitting right behind you right now, so go talk to them. But what I am saying is if you had a preconception that all I have to do is set up the scope program and I can jump in and do that, do you still believe that right now? Hearing none? Okay, did we call this debunked? 1, 2, 3. Come on, there we go. There it is. 410. Nope, we don't need to hear it again. All right, well, those are the top 8 myths. Again, there are many, many more. And if you want to do some further research, here's how you can do it. I am on YouTube. I've got a playlist on my YouTube channel called VATSIM Tutorials, and you can check that out. You can get some additional information on some good do's and don'ts on the VATSIM network. I also have that Twitch live stream I've mentioned a couple times, Slant Alpha Adventures on Twitch. We typically broadcast Tuesdays and Fridays at 7 p.m. U.S. Eastern, 2300 Zulu. Again, 7th anniversary giveaway night coming up this Tuesday. Please feel free to check it out. I've got that Discord, and there's our invite link to our Discord. Discord is a fantastic way for us as flight simulation enthusiasts to connect and share ideas. You're more than welcome to jump in on that community. There's my email address, slantalphaadventures@gmail.com. And to debunk the myth that you can't teach an old dog new tricks, I got a QR code. So go ahead and take a picture of that, scan that, and what that will do, guys, is that will direct you right to the Twitch, and then under the About tab, and actually I think this takes you right to the About tab, where all of that contact information is already there. That is my time, friends. I thank you so much for this exploration of VATSIM myths. I hope that you leave it with a fewer of those myths in your head. And again, I will be at we don't have a lot of time for Q&A, but I'm going to be at the Media Partner Lounge at 2 p.m. this afternoon, which is in the center of the hall over there. So if you want to come say hi, ask any questions about anything that you heard or saw today, that'll be a great place to do it. Or any of these methods of contacting me is also absolutely welcome to do anytime. So thank you again for your time. My name's Rob, the host of Twitch TV, Slant Alpha Adventures. I hope that you all have a great weekend here and are happy, healthy, and safe in your own travels and adventures as you make your way back home. Take care, friends.